What's up, everybody? If you're watching this, congratulations, because that means you have made it through the land of poor takes, biased opinions, and channels that are made up of only like high quality video, audio, and visuals, but lack the real substance that you're looking for. Do yourself a favor, like, subscribe to the channel. Welcome to Correlation Nation. Today we're going to be going over Dana White's Contender Series week number 9. And I don't know, I think there's some good fights on here. There's also some that are really, really hard to tell, what's actually going to happen, what's going to go on. But let me not bore you with that. Let's go ahead and hop directly into the breakdown. And let's go over this together, see what we can figure out. Now, when we hop over here to the Tapology on this, I don't know, it seems like the order of the fights and stuff have kind of been jumbled up, mixed around, so I'm not exactly sure who's going first, who's going last, whatever. You can see right here on the poster, it looks like Caldas and Zanakov. Forgive me for my pronunciation of that. I know it's probably not correct. It looks like they're the main event for the night. And then the last one, that looks like it's... So it looks like whatever we have currently is probably correct, but I'm not entirely sure. When I initially did it, the order that I have right here is the order that the fights were in, and I was trying to do it that way. I was just working from my bottom to the top, and now that's incorrect, but whatever. Let's go ahead and hop into this. We're going to start right here with Rafael going against Luke Fernandez. This is a... That's, I don't know. I try to watch him film on this. Let's hop into these guys. I don't even have any notes on Rafael, and that's simply because this guy has very little film to begin with, very low level of competition, and he's just like kind of running through these guys. So yeah, he's pretty young, 23 years old, but you see this, he has 5 professional fights, all in the first round, and none of these guys are really worth a hoot. Let's go to Sandro because he's at least an 8-4 guy, but I mean, look at this guy, 28, 6'3", fighting out of Brazil. I mean, these are just low-level fighters, and you're not really getting much from it. This guy's very wild, not very technical at all. I couldn't really get a good judgment of, like, what is, light foot. It's sloppy. Everything about this, at least from what I could see, was just very, very sloppy. And then his opponent on the other side, you do have Luke Fernandez, which has fought in, I think, Fury. Yeah, that's what it looks like. He's also done some grappling. He's fought some pretty good guys like Phil Hawes, Eric Anders, UFC guys. Let's look at the notes on this guy. Luke Fernandez. Yeah. Seems to be a fairly light-footed pressure striker. He does show decent bounce and a bit of footwork. So, it's not constant footwork. It's not constant bounce. It's just here and there, a bit of footwork. It's a bit like, he will move around a little bit laterally or here or there, but it's not super technical. Usually if it is, I'll put that, the footwork looks nice or good or, whatever. Boxing is quite loose. The guy's looking to find his way into the clinch where he can use a cage push with a bit of dirty boxing. He will look to get the fight to the ground, but seems to lack legitimacy takedown ability. I don't know why. That's probably like an autocorrect because I put just legit takedown ability. Which is a little bit concerning because it does seem that, he wants to grapple but doesn't have great takedown ability. Now, he is a guy that will just push you up against cage. He's okay with that. Use the dirty boxing. If he's able to get to the ground, great. All in all, I think he'll probably win the fight. I think he's the more... I don't know if he's not that well-rounded, but he's just more tested. I don't really have any confidence in this fight at all because the other guy's going to come in and push a pace. He's going to be... I would assume he'll be really, really aggressive. And when you have guys that are aggressive, and I think these guys are 205ers, Yeah, I mean, anything could happen. You know, Luke's not got the greatest stand-up game to begin with, so yeah, I think that it's anybody's fight, really. But I would favor Luke. I think that, you know, he'll be able to weather the storm, probably get some cage push, and just win minutes, and maybe eventually even maybe get into a position where you get a submission. And I'll be interested to see how these guys look physically, like when they face off. I haven't looked at any of that. I know it's the day of, but I just haven't looked at any of that. But yeah, I'm just going to side with him. But, you know, I don't love this fight. I don't think either of these guys are really, really like super high level MMA guys. This guy's probably a better grappler than he is an MMA guy. You know, and I think that if he wants to improve on his MMA skill set, he really needs to work on his takedown ability. Just to start with, because I mean, if that's your bread and butter, you know, you got to be able to get the fight where you want it to go, and I just don't really see that in a game. I'm not saying he doesn't have any takedown ability, it just doesn't seem like high level. It doesn't seem like he can just do it whenever to whoever, like, and that's what you got to be able to do. You got to be able to implement your game plan. You got to be able to get the fight where you want to go, and I just don't have full faith in this guy, so I am going to side with him. I think that he is the better fighter. I just don't trust anything he does. And we're just going to go ahead and move on, because I just think that's a pretty low-level fight. And then the next fight we have Donavon Hedrick going against Luis Felipe Diaz. This is a little bit better. Let's pull these guys up. We'll go Donavon at first. Let's see. I mean, here we go. Light-footed striker. He shows solid bounce with decent footwork and uses measured pressure. Carries a high guard, solid left jab, powerful right cross. He looks physically strong, but hasn't really been tested. Yeah, not a ton to go on here. Let's look at his topologies for a bit of reference. Donavon Hedrick. I mean, where's he fighting? Yeah, another guy kind of fighting in some low-level competition. Hasn't really fought anyone worth a darn. You know, fought a guy, you know, debut 1-10, 0-7, 1-2, 1-4, 2-2, 2-1. I mean, 2-1 is, or 2-2. These are the best guys you fought. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think he does have some. I think he looks pretty good though, and he does seem to have some real. Like, I guess, fight-changing power, I would say. I think he looks like he is physically strong. It's pretty hard. And so even though he hasn't really, you know, fought against high-level competition, it brings a lot of questions, because, you know, you don't really know a fighter that well until you see them deal with adversity. You know, how can they go long? What do they do if they're, you know, in a bad spot, you know, in a choke? What are they going to do? Are they going to panic tap? I mean, there's a lot of things that we haven't seen with this guy. But all in all, I think he looks pretty good, from what we can tell. But again, there's still a lot of questions on this guy, you know, and I don't really like, you know, trying to predict or bet on the unknowns, because it's just an unknown. But again, the only thing we have to go based off of is the film that we've seen, the fights that he's had. And again, like I already mentioned, even though they're low-level competition, he personally does look pretty good, shows some pretty good traits, and that's really all we have. Now let's move over to his opponent, Luis. Let's pull him up. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and pull him up here, and then we'll go over to the notes, and it looks like he's directly below. So this guy's a fairly light-footed pressure striker. He shows a bit of bounce, but overall seems pretty plotty. He looks to be fairly explosive, has snappy lead leg and backside kicks. Boxing looks decent. He carries a decent guard, but it seems to be a bit undisciplined. You know, he gets out of position quite a bit. Or I guess that's more of a question. But yeah, I mean, again, but, you know, doesn't have very good head movement. Boxing combinations look okay. He has solid 1-2 and seems to counter fairly well. The guy is a willing brawler, and I got questions around his takedown ability, but seems to be a sound grappler. Initial scrambles look solid, will threaten a bit offensively and defend offensively. Can lose minutes on the bottom. Has a big heart, but chin is a liability. And that kind of really tells me what I need to know about this fight, because anytime I'm looking at a fight, it's you know, the matchup, right? Styles make the fight themselves. So basically I feel like you do have a guy that, you know, right away says he can be a willing brawler. You know, a lot of the notes we have shows that, you know, like more of a striker, I would say. You know, he will grapple, and he, like I said, you know, he will threaten offensively, he will defend defensively. But I don't think he's a guy that is really going to try to grapple a whole lot. You know, doesn't show great takedown ability. And so because of that, I see this fight, you know, if it's on the feet, I do think Hedrick has the advantages here. I think he hits hard. This guy, willing brawler, also shows, you know, maybe he's got a liable chin. And so because of that, I'm going to be taking Hedrick. And let's pull these guys back up just really quickly. Be interesting to see what other people think about this guy. I don't think he's a bad fighter. I just think, you know, oh, and then, yeah, when you look at his record, you know, like the Marcin Bandel, I watched that fight. Very, very control-based grappling in that. Lost minutes, you know, grappling against Jaltin Almeida. That's, I mean, he lost that, but nonetheless, you know, that's impressive because that guy's an animal. Yeah, I don't think he's a terrible fighter. I just think when you look at his record, anytime he's gone up and fought higher level competition, he loses those fights, because you can see right here he fought in what's that, is it Brave? Yeah, in Brave or whatever, against like reputable, like those are respectable opposition, and he lost both of those fights. And then when you look at, I think down here, he lost a fight, you know, a guy that had a similar record to him, lost that fight. I don't know. I think he's okay. I think he has some glaring holes. And so, yeah, he can look good against lower level of competition, but I think that he's going to meet a guy that is just as well versed in most areas as himself. And I do think that Hedrick could find the knockout here. So that's what I'm going to lean. I'm going to lean with the knockout, and we're going to move on to the next bout. So the next fight we're going to be looking at is Imanol Rodriguez going against Roque Conceicao. This is kind of an interesting matchup. Imanol, I think he fought on the Ultimate Fighter. I actually didn't watch the Ultimate Fighter, but to put two and two together, I seen that his last bout was against a guy that actually won the Ultimate Fighter, and Joseph Morales. And I'm pretty sure I heard people talking about that, like when that fight occurred, and they were saying that that was maybe a questionable decision. It was a split decision. And so I could be totally wrong about this, but what I'm taking from that is that a lot of people actually thought that Imanol won that fight, which would actually explain why he's on the Contender Series directly after the fact, without even having another fight, because maybe the UFC brass thought the same thing. Now, when I watch tape on this guy, he looks pretty legit. Let's pull up his notes. Imanol. Yeah, he's up here at the top. Okay. Fairly light-footed striker. He shows good bounce with solid footwork. He carries a high guard. He has a solid teep at range, and has nice combinations in the pocket. He has fast hands, likes to throw the 4 and 6, backside, uppercut, and the hook. No idea what the heck just happened or why, but that was cute. Let's get back to it. He does seem to have good power and will swarm hurt opponents, so he has a pretty good light killer instinct. Has legit takedown ability. He has a nice hip toss. You can see that he has judo background. He also seems to kind of have an explosive level changes, and so he can get, you know, blast doubles and stuff as well, and they're just explosive. You know, he just picks these guys straight up, puts them straight down. Now he will let his opponents back up. He's not really trying. I mean, I haven't watched all his fights, so I'm not going to say he's not like a willing grappler. I'm sure he's like capable. You can just tell that he would rather stand. At least that's the way it seems. And he does have a pretty urgent get-up game. So I did see him get taken down, and he was quick to, scoot, get to the cage and try to work his way up. So you do like to see that when somebody gets put down, work their way up as soon as possible. Don't accept bottom, and choose to lose minutes. All in all, I think he's a really, really nice looking prospect. Now, I will say that at range, I don't really love his striking skill set at range so much, but he does use measured pressure. He kind of stays there, forces the fight. As I mentioned, he likes to throw that kind of like backside uppercut hook combination. Well, it's not a combination, but he likes to throw those in combination, and they're not really great like long range weapons, obviously. He does have a decent left jab, but he doesn't utilize it a lot. That front kick, that teep up the middle is probably one of his best long range weapons. And he'll just kind of push that pace. He'll kind of stay close enough to you to force the fight, and he'll use his boxing combinations in close, and they're solid. And he'll integrate some takedowns, the tosses and stuff, let you back up, and just kind of go back to work. He has good power. If he touches you, sees that it rocks you in any way at all, he will definitely look to finish that fight. So yeah, I mean, we got questions on the guy, obviously, but not too much. Like I said, overall, I think he looks like a pretty good prospect. I would like to see him. I think he has a really, really good, like I said, I think he's a good prospect all in all. But personally, I would like to see him work on his long range weapons, working on his jab and his cross a little bit more, and then utilizing those boxing combinations more specifically to that area of the fight, because I just see him like kind of wait, and then like he'll throw these, like I said, throw a 6 or throw a 4, and it's worked for him, but I don't know. I just it's not something I absolutely love. So yeah, we'll see if that's something that causes him issues later on in his fighting career. But up to this point, that's not really been an issue. I just think eventually he's going to meet competition opponents that are better than him at striking, and then yeah, maybe we'll see more of his ground game. I'm not real sure, but all in all, pretty good prospect. Let's look at his opponent now. His opponent, Roque, this guy, uh, 25 years old. Both these guys are pretty young. Let's pull them up. Where are you, Roque? There you are, bud. All right, this guy, he's a fairly light-footed pressure striker. He shows decent bounce with a bit of footwork. Tendency to move straight back. You never really love that, because if you chase, you can catch. He's a fairly explosive striker, has a high guard, decent kick, solid left jab. Boxing is pretty loose, however. Seems to have really well-timed takedown entries, and he's a fairly aggressive offensive grappler, but he lacks control. Questions around his cardio management, and yeah, I think both these guys look pretty good. I've never seen Imanol like as gassed as I have Roque, so that in itself kind of tells me, where I want to go, where I lean, because I think that, when two opponents are close in skill, basically comes down to, when a guy tires out. That's the way I see it. I'm going to go with Imanol. I think skill for skill, both these guys are pretty good. I would say that the striking is pretty even mostly. I do think Imanol's probably got a little bit faster hands, better boxing in the pocket. But I think Roque's probably got more effective like range striking, implementing the jab a little bit more. I just don't know that's going to work out for him in this situation, because if he's the pressure striker and he wants to move forward, he's going to be putting himself, like he's going to be walking into the pocket, And I think that Rodriguez is going to be able to, yeah. I think that, like I said, the stand-up's pretty close, all in all. Imanol's probably got a little bit of a speed advantage. Powers, I don't know. Both of them look like they have pretty solid power. Imanol might have the power advantage, maybe. But I would say it's probably pretty close. I don't think that Roque is going to be able to submit Imanol. I just think that Imanol's like got really, really good strength, like physical strength. Yeah. I think Imanol eventually gets a TKO in this fight, either knockout or TKO. That's where I would lean. Let's pull up their Tapology real quick. 25 years old, 7 knockouts, 2 submission wins. They've never been finished. So you might be able to get that. But I think, which fight was it that I watched? The Hugo Paiva, which, yeah, it's been a while, 5 years. Boy, pretty competitive fight mostly, but eventually in the second round, dude just fell off a cliff, could barely keep his hands up, and Hugo was just kind of teeing off on him. I'm surprised that he made it through that fight. So he does have heart, but I don't know, man. I think Imanol will put it on him. Let's pull him up real quick. I think his aggressive killer instinct is going to be a difference in this fight. Look at both 25 years old. Yeah. That's what I'm going to go. I'm going to go, by TKO, probably a second round TKO if I had to guess. It's like I said, we've seen this other guy fall off a cliff in the second round already. So that's going to be my guess on that. But I do think that he wins the fight. All in all, both of them fairly good prospects. I don't think that Rocky's got like a bad skill set. I just think that his cardio is a liability. And so it'll be an interesting fight to watch, see how they match up and everything. But we're going to move on to the next bout. We have Adrian Luna, Martinetti going against Mark Vologdin. Yeah, this is a tough one for me. I don't know. I watched them. I think they both look pretty good. It's Tele2 tapes, kind of. They're very different in stylistic, or like what they bring to the table stylistically. Luna's more of a, a little bit more of a plotty kind of slip and rip. Doesn't slip real well, but he is looking to kind of slip and rip on the feet just a bit, use some kicks from range, and ultimately, he's going to be an opportunistic grappler. That's what he does, and he is a little bit more control based. Will use some ground and pound to try to open up some submissions, and seems pretty good at it. And then Mark on the other side, this guy is a kind of a powerhouse. He's an explosive striker. He has really nice kicks, I would say pretty good movement, bounces around a little bit, not the most technical, but it's fairly good. Switch stance striker, like I said, heavy kicking game, powerful, just a powerful dude. He's very compact in stature, but you can tell that he's a very powerful guy, and he, it seems that he has some ability on the ground. I've seen him get some triangles and, the takedowns, but he's a striker at heart. This guy definitely would strike. Let's pull him up and see our notes on these two. Adrian, or what was his name? Yeah, there he is right there. All right, we'll start with Adrian. This guy is a slightly light-footed switch stance fighter. He shows a bit of bounce on the step back, but otherwise is pretty flat-footed. Pretty basic striking skill set. He has a high guard, deep low side kicks, kind of at range. Decent counter boxing. Seems to be a pretty good transitional grappler, both offensively and defensively. Position over submission and uses decent ground and pound to hunt for submissions. Yeah, I mean, that's almost verbatim of what I already said. Not much different. And then when we go over to Mark, this guy is a light-footed striker. He shows solid bounce with a bit of in-and-out style. It's kind of, I don't know. I mean, I remember initially watching him, I thought he was in and out. And not to say he's not, but not always. It's not a constant for him. You know, he does tend to move straight back. Explosive switch stance striker with a snappy kick from range, low side spinning back kick. He's got a lightning fast spinning back kick, by the way. I don't know that I've ever seen him land it flush, but he's got it. He'll kind of pot shot from range and look to counter opponents when they enter the pocket, or he'll enter the pocket with a 2-3, like 2 or 3 shot combo, and he'll add knees as they dip. Shows a decent sprawl with some takedown ability, has a strong squeeze on the ground. I don't know. This fight for me is one of the tougher ones to call. Part of me throughout the whole process of breaking both these fighters down was going Mark, Mark, Mark. But something in the back of my head is saying that eventually Adrian is going to be able to weather this storm and eventually get his back or some advantageous position on the ground and get a submission. And then when we pull him up on Tapology, let's see. I know he's been choked. Yep, was choked down in 2020. That was like one of his first fight. I mean, you got a 2-round decision, so I'm not sure what the heck that's about. But, yeah, I mean, that guy was 5-0. This guy only had one professional fight at that point. Hasn't really fought like the greatest opposition. It seems like when he fights better opposition, he has found ways to lose those. I think he's a good fighter. I think he needs to put himself in a position to just test himself a little bit more. So this is a good start for him going to Contender Series. He's still only 25. Be interesting to see how these guys match up. This guy's, like I said, he's kind of fire hydrant, stocky, short, but I mean, these are smaller weight class, but 5'3" is quite small. Let's see how big Luna is. Yeah, 5'8". Only ever lost a decision. Fought an 8-3 guy, 12-4 guy, 25-10. That's a lot of experience right there. 6-2 guy. And I don't think the record always says everything, right? Because it obviously depends on who your opponents were, but I don't know. It's a very difficult fight to, like I said, to call. I'll tell you what. It's a near, yeah, I mean, that should be right. I think I'm going to go with the underdog. I do think Adrian Luna, that's so tough. I think that eventually he'll be able to... the other thing that I'm trying to take into consideration right now is the fact that Mark is kind of muscle-bound a little bit. And so, usually smaller guys fight at an extremely high pace and all that. But if Adrian Luna can implement some of the grappling, will that wear on Mark's gas tank enough that you're going to see? Because this guy really does rely on his speed and like his quickness and power. And if he starts to fade even just a little bit, he loses a lot of what makes him who he is. So, and then I think Luna, he's just steady. He'll just be steady all the way through the fight, bearing he doesn't get knocked out. And I don't know that I've ever really seen him rocked. But we also haven't seen him fight Mark. So I'm going to side with the underdog here, the slight underdog, but it's not with a ton of confidence. I could see this fight going either way. How many decisions has this guy been to? Yeah, quite a few. So it's just going to be difficult to try to predict how this fight plays out. Like I said, I'm going to sign with him, but it's not with a ton of confidence. I can see this going either way easily. And we're going to move on to the main fight of the night, and that's Lucas Caldas going against Magomed Zainakov. Now, let's pull up Lucas. Here's our guy. Guy doesn't have a ton of film to watch, so this is what I got from him. Fairly light-footed pressure striker, shows decent bounce with a bit of footwork. He's a switch stance fighter, seems fairly aggressive, solid kicks from range. Boxing is quite loose but has fight-ending power. And then his opponent, Magomed, this guy, fairly light-footed striker. He shows decent bounce and footwork, but tends to be pretty grounded and uses measured pressure. Has nice backside kicks from range, front, side, and low. He carries a high guard and has well-timed counters, especially that elbow. He catches kicks well and returns fire. Let's get back to where we were. He has good combinations in the pocket, elbows and knees in the clinch. Questions around his ground game, but should be getting the right looks in camp, because this guy trains with, I'm pretty sure, Khabib in them. Fun fight. Both these guys are pretty good. I think that all in all, Magomed's the more tested guy. Comes from a Muay Thai background, which is a little bit different, but he definitely comes from a Muay Thai background. He's probably a huge favorite. Yeah, I don't know if that's deserving. I mean, I think he's probably the rightful favorite, but I think a minus 450, 4.5 to 1 is. I mean, he could get slept too. Not impossible. Let's see what we've got. Age is similar. Taller fighter. That's kind of surprising to me. I'll have to see him stand by each other. He's got a little bit of giving up a little bit of a reach to his opponent, Lucas, on the other side. Let me go back to Magomed just real quick and see how many. Been to 2 decisions. Both of those more recently against higher level competition. This guy's probably not ever been. Nope. Round 1, round 2. That was a loss to an illegal move. Yeah, I think you look at the under probably, because both these guys are pretty good, and they're both powerful. I think that I would probably get like the pure like power edge to Caldas. I think that he probably does have a slight advantage in the actual just like raw power, but I do think that the other guy's probably a little bit more technical, and he also uses his elbows and knees and stuff, can be quite damaging. So I would definitely look to take the under in this fight. I don't know what it's set at, but honestly, fight doesn't start round 3. Under 1.5 is probably what I'd be looking at overall. Yeah. And I would just side with Magomed. I mean, he's obviously a huge favorite for a reason. I just think that the other guy does have the power to knock him out. Let's see. I want to look at this guy and see, like, yeah, how many knockouts this guy have? Yeah, 4. Split, strike, flying knee, triangle. Yeah. Fun fight. I'll be interested to just kind of go back, see what other people have to say about all these, because I think that's another key element, like for me, is I have my own perception of these fights and what I see, and the way I break them down and everything, but it's really easy to overlook little details. So what I like to do is I like to go back, see what other people are saying about it, see if there's something that I missed, something that would change what I think the outcome of the fight could be. And I'll give you a good example. You have fights that are like a tale of two tapes, a grappler versus a striker, right? And you go through it, you break them down, and you try to see, how you think the fight's going to play out. I'm going to give you a very specific matchup, which was the Mershart versus, what's that kid's name? Polish kid. Dang, I can't think of his name. But anyways, basically, that his opponent is just got like no ground game whatsoever. Gets submitted real easy. And Mershart is a good grappler. And then on the other side, Mershart is not like, he's a little bit sluggish, not very slow, a bit flat-footed. Well, actually, I think he's got a little bit better footwork, but he doesn't move his head much. He's just a stiff striker, and he can be clipped. He can be chinned. And I was siding with the grappler. I thought, it's only a matter of time before he gets his fight down to the ground. And that's the side I leaned with. Well, in the end, I remember hearing, who was it? I think it was, let's pull him up. I want to pull him up because I want to get this right. I want to make sure that we have this right. I'm going to go, sorry. Let's go home. It wasn't MMA 138. It was Liam, right? Liam, Pig Fights or whatever his name is. Yeah, I listen to these guys. These are two guys that I respect. I respect their opinions and the way they break down fights. And for like Liam, I think like MMA 138 or whatever, the big thing with him is that him and I think see things very similarly a lot of times. So I can watch some of his breakdowns and see a lot of the same things that I see. I know it sounds weird, but nonetheless, I can watch them and I'll go, you know what? A lot of the stuff he sees, these are things that I'm seeing. So we see fighters very similarly. And then Liam, the thing I like about him is, he attacks things, like if you watch his videos, he attacks things where he talks about the actual betting aspect of it. And those are things that I respect quite a bit. Now, I don't remember which one of these guys it was. I think it was Liam that actually said this. And he had said when it came down to that fight specifically, I remember, I was on one side, he was on the other, if I remember correctly. But nonetheless, what they were saying is that Gerald, you basically, whether like he wears these guys down and then he starts getting takedowns and stuff in like the second, third round. So if he can kind of weather the storm and stuff, he tends to take some of these fights over later. But because of the lopsidedness, in the stand-up and the ground game, basically what they were saying is that that fight wasn't ever going to see the second or the third round, which was something that I didn't really consider in that moment. I was thinking that he would be able to weather that. And it turns out they were right, because he got starched pretty quickly. And that's when it made me think that the outside noise is very important sometimes, than these little small details, because it could have been very easily that he had the movement, and he had the striking defense, and he had these things to be able to kind of weather that storm for 2 rounds or whatever, get into the third round and get it to the mat. But he wasn't ever going to be able to wear him down with his style. And yeah, it's just a small bit of information that can kind of get lost in the mix. And for me, it was. And so I remember after the fact, I was like, hey, that outside noise, being able to consider what other people see, you got to take it into account. It doesn't mean like, oh, you're wrong or they're right or whatever, but if they're adding a bit of information that you can acknowledge that maybe you missed, and then add that, the outcome is totally different, right? And so yeah, I think you should always consider the outside noise, at least somewhat, at least take it in. And anyways, that's my thoughts on the fights. I'm going to watch the breakdowns. I'm going to listen to other people, and I'm going to go from there. But best of luck to everybody. Enjoy it. I think we got one more week. We got 10 weeks, right? So enjoy it, and we got one more. All right, catch you guys next time. Peace out.